Welcome to another RaiderPower.com mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson, and I'm pleased to say once again I'm joined by Joe Yeager. Joe, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. Looks like it could be a moist, damp mailbag, which always makes a West Texan happy, I must say.
Well, what's up with all this rain, man? I'm just as excited as the next person about it for sure. And I want you to notice, until now, I did not say senior writer. I did not introduce you, but I did. I had to. 10 seconds without it. Yeah. All right. So first question from Rawls Landman, a staple here on the mailbag. He wants to know what our favorite uniforms are. He said it could be traditional, more current, whatever. What do you think, Joe?
Well, surprise, surprise. I'm going with old school Wisconsin. Love Wisconsin. Wow. With the classic red and white, but you got a little bit of sort of pizzazz with that block W kind of swept back on the white helmet. Yeah. Just love. I'd like to see Texas Tech play Wisconsin for the national title. That way I'd have my favorite team and my favorite uniform on the same field, and I'd be a happy man.
I got to say, I've always really liked Tech's black uniforms, and even going back, the red jerseys with the black helmets, that was one of the reasons I started looking at Texas Tech. But my favorite as a kid, always growing up, as far as college football, was Michigan, for no reason, just because I like the helmets. I had no affiliation, but the helmets were fantastic, and I loved. I was a big Desmond Howard fan when he played there. The whole Heisman pose when he would return a punt and everything, that was pretty cool. But the all-time favorite uniform, as everybody knows, even the haters, is the Dallas Cowboys in all football. So with that star, I know y'all are going to love that, some of y'all. All right, next question. Old Texan, 1953. Joe, I want you to take a first stab at this because this is more of an opinion. Why does it seem like, or at least to Old Texan 1953, that verbal commitments don't mean as much now as, say, maybe before? He went on to say he knows some players are just holding a place hoping something better comes along, but why aren't the verbal commitments binding, and is there anything that you can do about it?
Yeah, part of that could be perception a little bit versus reality. I mean, I'm not sure that I've ever seen any real evidence that people are backing out of verbal commitments more than they used to. I don't know, maybe it seems like it, maybe not. So I don't know about that, but as far as can anything be done to sort of formalize these things and make them binding, and really, I mean, unless you're Mac Brown, back when he used to do this at UT all the time, he would say, hey, you either commit here on the spot and you stick with it, and if we find out you visited someplace else, then we're yanking your scholarship. And so this is it. But I mean, how many schools have the kind of ability to do that sort of thing? It's not very many. And if you don't, then you just have to chuck it into the wind and hope that it sticks. And 90% of the time it does, supposedly, as we said on an earlier mailbag.
And that's a great point about the Mac Brown. I was going to bring that up. He used to do that, but even over the last several years, he wasn't able to do that because prospects just said, okay. There was a year or two where they just said, okay, then I guess yank my scholarship. But I don't think that people are breaking their commitments any more than usual. I think there's, just like everything else, there's more media coverage across the board and everything, so you hear more about it now. This is a good one. I'm curious to see how close you and I are on this one. Reckham247 wants to know how long we believe, honestly, that it's going to be for Kingsbury and Tech to win a Big 12 championship.
Well, I mean, that's an extremely difficult question because we've only got 1 year of evidence. Yeah. I mean, Cliff's been here 1 year, and, really because of that final win against Arizona State, it turned out to be a pretty good year, all right? But still, I mean, I wouldn't want to venture out. The thing I would say is that if, Cliff has another good season or two, and then Tech starts working to extend the contract or get him a new contract, the way Baylor did with Bryles, then at that point we can probably safely say that he really is a very, very good coach. And let's just assume that this happens. I would say, let's say maybe 5 to 6 years. And I don't think it's going to happen this year now, but year after this one could be interesting because I think Tech could be very, very good in 2015. Yeah. But just sort of a ballpark guesstimate, I'm saying maybe 5 to 6 years.
Wow, you're a little more level-headed than I am on that. I don't think it'll take 5 or 6 years because this isn't your uncle's Big 12. If it was the Big 12s of around 2005 to 2008 or 9, then yeah, I would say maybe it would take that long. But this, let's be honest, this is a down Big 12. I mean, yes, there's some good teams. There are 4 or 5 good programs, but as far as an elite program right now, I don't think so. And as far as Kingsbury being able to be competitive, I don't think they're going to challenge in 2014. In 2015, they have to go to Oklahoma and Austin, which is still difficult. I have a hard time seeing them winning both those games. But 2016, they'll get Oklahoma and UT at home, hypothetically. And if Webb comes back for his senior year, that would be his senior year. That would be his 4th year in the program. And also, some of these guys, this 2014 class that we both have said we're high on, will have some years of seasoning. And hypothetically, once again, and I could see Tech really making a run in 2016 for a Big 12 title. 5 or 6 years, man. you're dashing some hopes here. Yo, you have to wait. Oh man.
Hey,
Joe.
when's the last time Tech ever won a conference title?
I know.
People are used to waiting decades.
I hear you. All right, Go Tech 2004. He has a question about, he noticed they kept showing Cliff Kingsbury's excitement at the baseball game. He wanted to know if there's a positive or negative ripple to this effect. This isn't a new thing with Kingsbury. He's made it a point. You remember the basketball game where him and
Eric Morris, I think.
Elf was there, of course. That wasn't mentioned on the broadcast, but of course, and a lot of the Twitter, it wasn't either. But for the basketball game, but yes, Eric Morris is usually there, right next to him, cheering on, and I think he's made it a point. Obviously he's a former Tech great. He cares about the university. That's a big selling point for him in recruiting, and this. I don't see it being any other way other than positive. I can't see it being a negative that the coach is out there supporting all the other squads. And that's one thing I have heard from a lot of recruits, even recruits that weren't even that high on Tech, was that they had to give Tech a look because Kingsbury and that staff with a lot of old Tech players obviously care about the program in the school more than somebody just right looking to their next job. All right, Joe. Z Tanner wants us to look to play defensive coordinator for Texas Tech, and if we could do that effectively, that's probably what we would do, right? We'd be defensive coordinator somewhere because it's a little bit better pay than ours right now.
Cliff, if you're listening, all right. Yeah, I'm available. Maybe I'd have to have a little lag time because I wouldn't want to leave these guys high or dry or anything.
Right.
But,
so he wants us to look at basically what kind of scheme we would use against 3 specific opponents this year: Arkansas, Oklahoma State, and TCU. Joe, let you go first.
It's tough. Well, I think first off, you have to look at Oklahoma State and TCU first, sort of grouped together, because basically they're going to be running a very similar offense and similar to Texas Tech. It's going to be a spread. With TCU, you got Cumbie and Meacham, both of those guys, Tech, Oklahoma State connections. And then, of course, Oklahoma State somewhat has kind of set the standard, I think you'd have to say, for at least consistency with the spread. So you kind of group those two together, and you'd start out with Oklahoma State. And they don't have a lot of high-powered skill position players coming back this year like they usually do. But that offense is so consistent and has so much continuity because of the system that they run year in and year out, regardless of who the coordinator is, that just by repetition, those guys are going to be proficient, and it's going to be a good, solid spread offense. Now, when you're facing that kind of an offense, what do you got to have to stop it? Well, ideally, you need a very good pass rush and cornerbacks who can plaster receivers. If you don't have that, let's say Texas Tech, it does have some questions on the defensive line as far as pass rush goes, and at cornerback, Justice Nelson, but who else? We don't know for sure. Okay, so if you don't have those 2 key ingredients, what do you need? I think you need soundness in the scheme. You need guys who know what they're doing back there, and at least you're not going to have a lot of busted coverages and have guys running through the secondary free, because if you do have that, you're going to be giving up 66 points. Yeah. Okay, so I think that being the case, that's probably what Wallerstedt is looking at doing against a team like Oklahoma State, is simply relying on guys to do their job, know their position, and don't bust coverages, play soft zone, keep everything in front of you, tackle, gang tackle, hopefully get a few turnovers, and force them to march 15 plays down the field for touchdowns, or ideally hold them to a bunch of field goals. And I think that's probably what Tech does against Oklahoma State. Against TCU, same kind of offense, but brand new to those guys for the most part. They're not going to be as proficient as Oklahoma State is. They probably don't have the overall talent, even that Oklahoma State does on a down year. I think in that sort of a situation, Wallerstedt can afford to be more aggressive, gamble and blitz a little bit more, try some surprise here and there, which he always talks about as being sort of a surprise defense, doing things that the offensive coordinator doesn't expect. I think you'll see Tech be more aggressive with TCU. Arkansas, completely different ball game, and I suppose that's why he included Arkansas in that group. Bielema, old Big Ten guy, and he's Big Ten football. Even though he's in the SEC, he's going to ram it between the tackles and then try to surprise you over the top deep occasionally. Right. That's what they're going to do, try to suck you in. And Tech has some questions with run defense as well, of course. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to test Tech, and Tech, I think what Wallerstedt is going to do in this one is probably, it's very early in the season, he really doesn't know what he has at that point yet. And I think so, that being the case, he's going to play a little bit cautious, go with a base defense, play it by ear, and then see how it develops. And if the new guys on the defensive line are holding things down pretty well, then you stay that way. You're great. You don't need to bring in linebackers in one high and have Ward come down and trying to crash down on the run. If, on the other hand, they're gouging you well into the second quarter, then you just simply got to start loading up the box a little bit, and then hope that the cornerbacks and J.J. Gaines can stick with those guys in a man-to-man situation on an island like that. So I think that's kind of the way it shapes out. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I have a different approach to this. First of all, as far as alignment and things that you want us to answer, things change depending on down and distance, the situation of the game, of course. So it's not easy to just say a blanket statement. Of course, Arkansas wants to line up in a power formation and run you over, and TCU is going to the spread. Oklahoma State, as you mentioned, spreads you out. But to me, Oklahoma State beat up Tech physically. I mean, that Halloween game, that and the Kansas State game, but especially that Oklahoma State game, it was all about, yes, they have speed guys, but it was all about their offensive line and their defensive line just whooping Tech. That's what happened. They just whooped Tech up front. And I don't think they're going to change that. That's what they've done. Yes, they're in a spread, but they ran the ball a lot. I mean, they ran the ball for over 300 yards. So to me, the key is going to be, and I sound like a broken record with this, but to me, it's the key to the entire program, is can Tech consistently stop the run? So until they answer that question, or the answer to that question is yes, then everything else is moot. Yes, that people can beat you off play action and stuff like that, but Tech hasn't, at least at the end of the year, didn't even get to that point where teams were having to do that, because they were simply lining up and running over them.
Except in the bowl game.
Except in the bowl game.
They got help.
Well, you know what, though? There was a couple of times during the Arizona State game where they came out in the second half and they ran the ball up the middle, and just ran it right down Tech's throat and scored. They came back on their second possession. I think that's when Reggie Davis returned the kick. I'm not sure if that's right. Yeah. But anyways, I know for a fact Arizona State came back on their second possession and decided to get tricky and throw on second down. It was incomplete or something like that. And then third down, they had to punt. But if they had just stuck with it, I felt like, and ran the ball, then it may have been a different story. But anyways, to me, that's the key, is whatever alignment that matches up that gives you an advantage to stop the run is what Tech should do, is what I would do.